everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, here today to talk to you about One Day They'll Wonder What Happened Here by the New York-based band Fliege. And from my understanding of this album, it's sort of meant to be a kind of sonic reinterpretation of the John Carpenter film, The Thing. And I feel the need to be honest and preface this review by saying that I am not that well versed in film or film history. I haven't seen a lot of classic films, and I'm not that familiar with kind of the evolution of film. And film seems to be this band's thing and where they draw a lot of inspiration from, which is very cool. And if you are a film aficionado, you might find enjoyment and catch references in areas that I might have missed and might heighten your experience with this. But I am here to talk solely and purely about the music, which I find very intriguing. This album seems to be listed as a black metal album, and that's how it's classified on the archives. And yes, that does make sense. If you had to place this in one of metal's primary subgenres, it definitely leaned in the black metal direction the most. But this is a very different black metal album. It draws from elements of post-punk and synthwave and dark wave and film score, and even some quirky new wave elements find their way here, and it works somehow. The Thaw gives this album a very unsettling intro. You got these very spacey psychedelic synths, and these heavy guitars sort of crawl into the mix. The vocals come in very triumphantly, and right off the bat, you can tell this record sounds rather large and epic in scope. It sounds cinematic, which makes sense considering the concept of the record. Glacier of Eden Part 1, you get these dissonant, kind of spiraling riffs where the gain is really turned up. There's a lot of cool kind of harmonics and nice, interesting guitar flourishes. The vocal screeches are harsh, but there's also some melodic phrasing to them, with some like harmonious backing vocals that play a nice complement. There's this bridge with some interesting drum pads, some very sci-fi-ish synths, and this moody sung section. It fits well on the record, and it doesn't take me out of the experience. Man is the Warmest Place to Hide opens up with some really washed out synths that give me this kind of old school video game feel, and they're met with these very seismic riffs, these thick guitar chugs and these really blackened tremolos that also somehow nest these really effervescent gang vocals and this really cold post-punky sung bit. And there's also this really wicked kind of proggy midsection with these very twisty riffs. I know these are not words and terms you are used to hearing when describing black metal, and they're definitely not terms I'm used to using when describing black metal to other people. But as I said, this is a very different black metal record. Jaws of Life starts with these really sweet, kind of bouncy piano licks. You get these more open, sort of ghostly guitar passages. But the metal elements, with all this being said, are not lessened. And that's important for me to say. They just leave room for a lot of unorthodox experimentation on this album. The tone of the guitars on this record are sharp, they're crisp, but they're still very dark. This is definitely black metal guitar playing. Terraform, there's a lot of ambience to it. It starts with this really minimalist, dark wave-ish intro before a real pounding, ferocious riffs that met with this very steady marching groove from the drums. There's also a very fiery guitar solo with some really nice, sweet, slick hammer-on bits. The second half of this too, at times on Terraform, are probably the most purely and kind of straightforward black metal this album sounds, with these really frigid and menacing tremolos. Sight for the Snowblind is definitely probably the biggest curveball on this thing that might really surprise someone who is coming in ready for a metal album. Not saying that this isn't, but it's definitely different than what the experience you're probably expecting. It comes in with this almost dream poppy introduction. And when the black metal vocals do come in, they come in very intensely and evocatively, where at the same time, they're met with these very scratchy, very 80s sounding synths, and the way the band incorporates all of these different unique soundscapes on top of the already very chilling black metal elements, it creates a real awe-inspiring experience that really draws you in easily. Blair Built a Spaceship is fast, it's ferocious, it's probably the heaviest cut on the album, and at the same time allows for probably the poppiest vocal interjections on the record. It's a very interesting contrast. And there's this bridge, and I said this album has some quirky new wave elements, and this bridge is kind of Immortal meets the Talking Heads. Yes. The final track, Glacier of Eden Part 2, is this labyrinth of winding, very complex riffs, but they're not placed randomly or just kind of thrown one after another. There's a real direction, and they're really well arranged and take you somewhere. The drums are super impressive on this track with these rushing fills and these sustained, hard-hitting drum passages. In conclusion, this Fliege record is not a metal album I knew I wanted. And I can't say it's a black metal album that I necessarily want to necessarily see metal taking the direction of much further. I like my black metal kind of the way it is, dark, frigid, but I'm glad that this album exists. I'm thankful for it. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I'm glad there is something different in the genre that's very enjoyable and unique. the black metal, if you are like a real black metal purist, and I'm not always the most innocent of that. So if you are that, you might not like this, and I would understand that. But if you can come into this album open-minded and are ready for some different elements to be brought in, I think there's a lot to hold on to here and to be enjoyed. The way the band incorporates these albums, it doesn't water down the metal albums or make them light or lessened, which is a way sometimes bands do when they bring in kind of new types of sounds. I wouldn't say this is an accessible record, but I do see it as a way for people who are not typically or have not been introduced to black metal to find a way in and maybe want to dive deeper into the genre by hearing it packaged in this way. This album is definitely adventurous. It's very bold, it's daring, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's still a very heavy, dark, intense metal experience with black metal fans definitely in mind. And it's being catered to black metal fans, for sure. And so those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed this review, please hit that like button and be really appreciate it. If you would be so kind and want to be informed of my next reviews and kind of stay in the loop, want to support the channel, consider subscribing. It would mean a ton to me. I have a Twitter you can follow. The link to that is in the bio of this YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. If you've listened to this record, tell me what you think. Leave me any feedback. I love reading all of those. Keep it metal. My name is Maddie, aka Beaver Mosh. Signing off.